All right, we haven't talked too much about baseball since that's kind of gone underway. So let's kind of hit some of the major topics that are kind of floating around in baseball. Um, the new one that recently came out is that the Oakland A's are threatening relocation. What are your kind of thoughts about that?
Um, I'm sure it's more than just him, but it kind of just feels like Billy Beane saying, "Give us a good stadium, or I'm leaving. I'm tired of dealing with the small market or the small market mentality." Um, yeah, it's interesting. It's to me, it just seems like a leverage play. Like, there's other cities we could go to, and it kind of just seems like the A's are saying, "Look, we're going to force the issue in the media, and we're going to try to get public opinion, and we think we deserve a really great stadium, and if not, we're going to go somewhere else like Vegas, like the other Oakland team did." So um it kind of feels like from the front office point of view it's a win-win, unless I don't see how it could backfire for them, really.
Yeah, I think it's 100% a leverage play. The A's are like, listen, we're your last hope. We're all you have left. So you either treat us well or we're out as well. I think it would be sad to see all the teams leave Oakland. I think just especially the A's. I think they've had such a historic run in Oakland, and I think it'd be wrong to see them somewhere else. I think so. I hope it doesn't happen. I hope they get their new stadium and everything's back to being good. But it would be cool to see the A's with a big budget though. Like they always have good players, and once they get to the time where it's time to re-sign them, they can't afford them. So it would be cool if they could compete with teams like the Dodgers and the Cubs and the Red Sox and kind of pay some players.
Yeah, I saw a column from somebody who works at the Athletics, and they were saying how the Athletics have like an owner worth $4 billion, but they are, and like they're the number six market in the country. And like I didn't even know that. Like I would never have guessed the Athletics, had that kind of backing. And because they just aren't treated like that. Like Moneyball was started there for a reason. Like they had to do Moneyball to even try to succeed, and it really hasn't even fully worked. So it would be disappointing for their fans. It's almost easy to be like, do they have the worst fans in the country just because all their teams have left? But like obviously it's not their fault. But the mind instantly goes there where it's like they have the worst fans or the most unlucky fans because literally all their teams are leaving them. Like,
I think it's unlucky. I think, well, I mean, the A's don't have the greatest attendance, but you looked at the Raiders and they had all those diehards that would wear the shoulder pads and the face paint and all that kind of stuff. Um, I just feel bad for the city in general. I mean, I do understand that there's money in other cities, and that's kind of the new trend. We hadn't seen any relocations in our lifetime until a couple years ago, and then three or four happened just like that. And so I think it's kind of a new trend to saying like one team kind of did it, and then everyone else is like, oh, it worked out for them, so why can't it work for us? I just hope it doesn't become like a new thing where a bunch of teams are kind of shifting around and
yeah, I mean, the only thing I'd say is the Athletics the last few seasons averaged less fans than the Reds, and they had good teams, like really, like actually good teams. And the Reds aren't exactly known for, I'd say good teams or fans who turn out the games. So they're not doing themselves any favors when then the owners see that and they're like, okay, well, we don't have a stadium we want. Fans aren't coming to the games. Like we need this, or we're going to go to Vegas, or we're going to go to, I've seen Portland thrown out, or Vancouver, or Nashville. So, yeah, I don't think they're doing themselves any favors, but it's also, of course, not their fault necessarily, the fans.
right. I think it'll be another team has kind of mentioned about relocation is the Rays, who I think they've consistently come in the last in terms of attendance in the last few years. They talked about doing like half their season in Montreal and then half in Tampa Bay. I don't think that would work at all, but it's something like it's interesting to think about.
Yeah, that's like the Super League's wet dream right there. Like trying to do like just yeah, just do some games in North America and some in Europe, and like that's like the beginning of that. It feels like yeah, we Tampa's not even a great spot, so let's just do Montreal, or let's. I just feel like something that like if you were a player on that team, you must hate that,
That's
because you're like, where do you live? And I don't know.
in the NFL, they always talk if you have two quarterbacks, you have no quarterbacks. I feel like that's the exact same scenario here. If you have two different home stadiums, you don't have a home stadium. Like, are players expected to buy an apartment in both places, or like it just doesn't seem logistically smart to me? And how do you develop loyal fans if so that you only get half your games at home to start with, and so now it's only a quarter? Like, it just doesn't seem like a smart play to me, and maybe that's why we haven't seen it come to fruition. But I don't know.
Yeah.
It's a thought.
I mean, yeah, then you have to deal with passport things. Is like it's not just like it's two different states, it's two different countries, and you have to try to like manage that. Like I would hate to be having to plan that trip for a team. You know, like that would just be miserable. I can't even imagine.
Sounds like
I don't think it would work either, honestly. I think it would just be like what fan would want to go to either of those games at that point?
I agree. Sounds terrible. In other big news, Albert Pujols DFA'd, Todd Frazier DFA'd. Our childhood is coming to an end.
Yeah, Pujols is. I looked at like his numbers today. Just I don't know, kind of refreshing myself because when I started watching baseball seriously, or probably when I watched it the most, he was just crushing it for the Cardinals. For I can think of 4 or so good years there where he was just crushing it. But you look at his career, it was really like a decade with the Cardinals where he was putting up monster numbers. And I think in some ways he's going to be remembered by the contract he got, and then how the play wasn't necessarily bad for the Angels, but it definitely went down a bit. And so I kind of viewed it as like a case study and almost like the crazy contracts that he got. Like it was like what, 10 years, 240 or something like that. Like he got wild numbers. So, yeah, but I mean, he's one of the greats. It's hard to argue against that. It'll be interesting to see what his legacy is, I guess.
Yeah. Couple things. One, he's the last active player from backyard baseball, so that'll be a sad day when he's done. Two, I don't think he's done. I think he's gonna find another place to play at least a couple more years. He's kind of chasing some milestones, and so I think he needs a couple more years to reach those. He's got to hit a few more home runs to reach another milestone. It's like 100 though, maybe less than that. I think it's like 2 or 3 years worth of decent numbers for him to reach another milestone in home runs. I think he still wants to play, but he came out and said he wants to play every day. I don't know that he's going to find that job. He's going to have to be a DH somewhere, and the only team I can think of is the Tigers, and they already have Miguel Cabrera. So I don't know. I think he's going to want to try to keep playing, but I think his career is shorter than he would like to admit. His numbers just aren't where they used to be. He came out and said he was upset with Joe Maddon, his managing style, and basically saying, I'm mad that I wasn't playing. But when you have Otani, he's got to be in the lineup as the DH. They just got a new first baseman who's playing well. So there wasn't room for him. And it's tough, but it is what it is.
Yeah. I mean, he had 20 good years.
Right.
At some point it's like, all right, your numbers aren't what they are. I mean, even if you compare them to Votto, like they both got comparable contracts around the same age, and Pujols' career, if you just look at the numbers, is better than Votto's. It's longer than Votto's. He's probably gonna, he lasted longer than Votto. I'd say Votto's kind of on a tailspin at this point. And that really just goes to show you what kind of career Pujols had. Like, I saw a stat the day he was released, and it was like only him and Hank Aaron hit like 600 homers, 600 doubles, and like 3,000 hits. Like 2 people in all of baseball ever have gotten that combination of stats together, and that's just wild. So I think that speaks to his legacy to some degree.
And I was happy that he went out to LA. I was tired of him in the NL Central, just beating up on the Cubs. I'm sure you were tired of him beating up on the Reds. Yeah. I mean, he got that massive contract. That was what it took to get him at the time. And I think the Angels knew all along that the last few years were going to be not what you hoped for, but you were willing to pay those years because you wanted those first 4 to 5 years. So I don't know, probably didn't end the way either the club or Pujols wanted, but baseball's a business, and that's what it is.
One of the GM at the time for the Angels, I think, said, maybe it was a few years after the fact, but he said, like, I wish we could have gotten him for 8 years. for maybe the money that we gave him for 8 years, but obviously you couldn't get him for 8. You had to get him for what he wanted at the time. So yeah, it was like a sunk cost. So like, let's compete for, the beginning of it. Also, I mean, the Angels can put up with that. They have the resources where they can sink that much money into Pujols and it won't kill them. Like, if we're going to compare him to Votto and the Reds, like, if you put all your money in Votto, like, that it's going to have more of an effect on your overall payroll. There's not as much wiggle room, I guess.
Part of the problem, though, is I don't think the Angels ever made the playoffs while he was there. Like that's part of the issue. And that obviously that's not all of his fault, but that just goes into this thinking that he was a bust in LA.
Right. It would have been interesting to see if he had stayed with the Cardinals, what kind of, if he would have kept his dominance a little bit longer, or if that was just a natural, progression of his career that was going to happen. It might have been just because he did get started so early. Like I think he was in the league at 21. So like, that's a decade in the league. Yeah. It's going to go downhill a little bit at some point.
But that's nothing to scoff at. So Let's stay with the Angels. Let's talk about Showtime, Shohei Otani. The dude is an animal. Last night he pitched 7 innings, struck out 10, and then went into right field to finish the game. Like, nobody does that. The dude is an animal.
Yeah, I was going to say, like, what's the last comparable player to him? Like a two-way player like him?
Babe Ruth.
Like, there's nobody in between?
I don't think so.
I mean, that's just it's wild. I mean, it's why I drafted Babe, obviously, but
right. Yeah, I mean, just all the stats you see about pitchers and hitting and all that stuff, like, it's always just two people in that category, and it's Babe Ruth and Shohei Otani. I think we're seeing a once-in-a-generational talent. The unicorn Shohei Otani might win the AL MVP, although Mike Trout's still the best player in baseball. But those two on the same team, that's a fun team to watch. If the games weren't so late, I would be watching them every night.
That's weak, but yeah, I mean, fair as well. I mean, I saw he's leading the AL in home runs right now, right? Yep. And he's also got like a 2 ERA.
Something like that.
It's not even just like he's doing both. He's doing both really, really well. So yeah, I don't know. It's you kind of hear about two-way players sometimes coming up in the minors, and you're like, oh, this could be sweet. And then it never really pans out. Like, usually they end up, even if there's talk about it, they end up picking one of the other for them. So it's cool that they're actually going through with it. Because the easy thing as a manager to do would be, all right, you're just going to pitch and then we'll save you for the next time. So I like that they're doing this. At least it makes it a lot more interesting.
Joe Maddon is the perfect manager for him because Joe Maddon doesn't care what anyone else thinks, and he's willing to move anybody and everybody around. Like, he put real, like, pitchers only in the outfield for a couple innings when he was with the Cubs. Like, he moved Travis Wood out there for a couple innings. He put Pedro Strop out there. So just like, but now that he actually has a two-way player, I'm sure Joe Maddon is just loving it.
Yeah. Yeah. It's a great, I don't even want to say problem. It's not even a problem to have. It's just a great situation to have, in your team. Like, think of the roster flexibility. If you only have X number of players, now you can have, you can carry more in one part of your team than another. So
the only thing I'm worried about is, does his career become shorter if he continues to do both for an extended period of time? Does that shorten his career? And I don't know the answer to that.
Yeah. Would the fatigue, or with just having more situations in which you could get hurt, or would that all, hinder you in the future, added together? I don't know. It's a good question.
Yeah. One thing I think they have been doing a pretty decent job of is they do have a pretty good pitch count on him. He's limited there. And I think most of the time he DHs. He doesn't play too much in the outfield, which obviously that gives your body a little bit more of a rest than run around the outfield. So
will be interesting.
Hey guys, thanks for joining us for this episode.
As there's a drive in a deep left field by Castellanos, it will be a home run. And so that'll make it a 4-0 ball game.
Don't forget, you can find us on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and anywhere you get your podcasts. Don't forget to like, subscribe, follow, and comment down below. Thanks, guys.